A private
Plane,
plane?
no, no, no.
Not yet.
That's a little unjustifiable. I mean, we'll occasionally take a private flight, but not to buy one. Those are millions of dollars, and I think my wife would rather have real estate.
All right, I got you going. You ready?
Yep.
Our guest is Michael Terpin, an American investor, entrepreneur, and public relations executive. In 2013, he co-founded BitAngels, an investment network for blockchain technology startups and the first angel network for Bitcoin and digital currency startups with 500 international investors. In 2014, Michael founded Transform Group, a Bitcoin and blockchain marketing firm headquartered in San Juan, Puerto Rico. He also runs CoinAgenda, the leading conference series connecting mainstream investors with blockchain and cryptocurrency investors. In 2018, Michael sued AT&T for $23.8 million in compensatory damages and $200 million in punitive damages, claiming that the company failed to protect his cell phone data and leading to hackers stealing $24 million worth of cryptocurrency. He was a victim of SIM card swapping fraud, a method used to steal one's phone number in order to access their crypto wallets. Michael, welcome to the B2B Lead Gen podcast.
Happy to be here.
We got to start by ragging on AT&T. There's a bunch of questions I want to ask, but let me tell you my AT&T story. It's not as good as you, but I'll start with mine. So when I was 30 years old, I was recruited by a gaming company which was based in Denver. I moved out there. We took it public on the NASDAQ exchange, raised about 10 million bucks, and spent it pretty quick too. And about 18, I think it was maybe 18 months into it, I was in an executive meeting. I was the head of marketing, and it was the CFO and the controller. And the controller says, I don't think we had any problems. We got at least 2 million bucks left in the bank. And the CFO says, actually, it's not quite 2 million anymore. It's more like 1 million. And then the CEO goes, well, actually, it's not really 1 million anymore. It's more like 500,000. And I thought, okay, time to start thinking about my next move. So I left the company, moved back home, and I had this really killer pad, and I subbed it to a friend of mine. And when she left, she never returned the cable box. And so I forgot about it. I didn't know anything about it, but I went to buy a home in LA, 5 years later, and my credit score was just terrible because of this fucking credit box, the card box that was not returned to AT&T. So I call AT&T to fix it up, and I say, I'm so sorry. They say, okay, well, fine, just pay this bill and we'll take it off your credit report. Well, I pay the bill, they don't take it off the credit report, and I wound up paying an extra point on my loan. And ever since then, I've never spent a nickel on AT&T, even though they got the iPhone first. I waited until someone else got it just so that I didn't have to give them a nickel. But now I see you actually have the coup de grace AT&T story.
Well, obviously, the cable division, I think at that time, DirecTV or whatever, is completely different than the mobility division. But this is really, a problem across multiple phone carriers, and it's something that, aside from my, federal lawsuit against AT&T for their responsibility in my case, I think that it's something that going forward, I've also reached out to the FCC, who can, mandate that changes happen in the way that telcos in the United States safeguard data. And, they slowly started protecting data when it came to robocalling. And it took years for, new actions to come around, and they finally did. But, just the simple act of mandating that a telephone company protect your PIN code by making it pass fail. So if you go to a bank and you tell the teller, I'm sorry, I forgot my ATM PIN code, can you just do it for me? They can't, right? You have to go to the fraud department and say you lost it or whatever, and they'll regenerate a new one. There's a structure that means that an employee of Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whatever, can't just look up your PIN code and take money out of your account. Unfortunately, and this is across most industries, you have to punch in a PIN code, even for, Delta Airlines or Marriott. And, it's just shocking to me that a place where the maximum amount of damage can be done. It's not just cryptocurrency. This is also done with sometimes bank accounts, with people going and stealing social media accounts and doing damage, with criminals even going in and applying for new lines of credit in your name, all the things you can do with the digital identity theft. And this has been going on for quite some time. And so obviously the punitive part of our case is that, we believe, as my lawyers say, on evidence and belief, that AT&T senior management knew about this a long time before my case came around, and didn't do anything to change their practices, which again could be completely averted if they simply had a pass fail. If when you go into a store, or you call on the phone or whatever, you say, okay, what's your 4-digit, or in the high security cases like mine, 6-digit PIN code, they say punch it in, or a robot voice says punch it in. And if it's not correct, you say, I'm sorry, you have to try it again. And it's simply pass fail. It's called a covered password. In the case of AT&T, and quite frankly, most of the other telcos, anybody who works there, including agents who are not even AT&T union employees, they're just people who are hired by the retail store, which is owned by a third party, they still have the equivalent of White House, high security access to your account. They can just go in, they can say, yeah, okay, you came in here, your ID didn't work, but I believe you. I'm going to put in the thing that you showed me an ID, and then I can just, on my own authority, a 19-year-old kid in a retail store, change your card without ever calling you.
And that's what happened to you, Michael.
That's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened to me.
Well, so what have you learned from it in terms of, like, now, how do you store your cryptocurrency? Is there a workaround to keep cryptocurrency safe?
Well, the workaround is for AT&T and the others to change their practices, because
that's the only way. Otherwise, your crypto is always a risk.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. I didn't lose any Bitcoin. I didn't lose any Ethereum. These were all things that came from native wallets, and native wallets are designed by the manufacturers of the currency. And there are, I would say, until they change their policies, there is no way to ensure that a really top hacker can't go in, bribe someone at AT&T, because there's long evidence that they've been bribing these kids who are usually about 18 or 19 years old, first job that they got. And, there have been people already jailed for this in a famous case where about 50 different people were hacked during a period of time, including the Consensus 2019 blockchain week conference in New York. There was again, 19-year-old, same age as my guy at the AT&T store, who we contend was bribed, and upon evidence and belief, as my lawyers say. This other guy went to jail because they found that he took $5,000 to turn over 50 phone numbers. And that's what these kids do. They're like, minimum wage or barely above it. And they get contacted by these gangs to say, hey, how'd you like to make some extra money? All you have to do is just do as we say, and we'll give you $100 a number. Well, $100 a number, and they make, millions on a couple of the ones that they're able to get through.
And where did the money wind up going? Do you know?
Yeah, of course. We were able to track it. The cryptocurrency, which again was smaller cryptocurrencies, were then moved to an offshore exchange and quickly exchanged for Bitcoin. And we were able to follow that whole trail. We have a confession from the main person involved, and we've got a judgment against one of the criminals, and a partial settlement for one of the other criminals. So there's no doubt of what happened in terms of the actual movement and what the criminal gang did. But we believe that AT&T is liable, because had they had better security, which they've been ordered to have better security under various federal regulations, and my lawyers can explain all the different statutes that they have violated in their actions. But if they had done the simple protection, just covering the password, none of this would have been possible.
So, look, I know there's so many people out there talking about crypto this and crypto that, and this stuff inside out. Some of us are still trying to figure out what the hell it is. So let's give you the chance here to tell us very succinctly, what is cryptocurrency?
Sure. So cryptocurrency is effectively a public blockchain. I think that cryptocurrency is not a great word because for the most part, it's not treated by most governments in the world as a currency. It's treated as property or as a commodity. If they called it crypto commodities, that might be a better word. But effectively, Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency and the first blockchain. That's where the concept came from. And Satoshi Nakamoto, who's the person or persons under a pseudonym, who created the white paper in late 2008 to kind of bring cryptocurrency into the world. And the idea was it was a response to the 2008 meltdown in the markets and massive money printing and bailouts and all the games that the central banks have been playing since we went into a fiat world that's not backed by gold. Really to look for a better kind of hard money to back stores of value and to have a peer-to-peer payment system was the original sort of concept of the 8-page white paper, which anybody in the world can look up on the internet, the Bitcoin white paper. It's only 8 pages long, and that's what everything developed from. And then in January, Satoshi, did what he said he was going to do, and he created the Genesis block. So a blockchain is a distributed ledger. It's run on thousands of computers all around the world. It's not owned or run by anyone. It's open source code.
When you say distributed ledger, it's a spreadsheet.
Well, that's more than a spreadsheet. It is actually a network of computers where anything that is done on one is then copied onto all the other nodes in the network. So in other words, if you have 10,000 computers running the Bitcoin blockchain and 9,800 of them shut down, just like the internet, the internet was modeled as a distributed architecture, so that in the event of a nuclear war, you wouldn't have a disruption if there were any, two nodes left on the network that could connect each other, and you didn't have the former, hub and spokes model that the client server architecture and mainframe computers were built on. And so the internet was the original breakthrough that really enabled cryptocurrency and blockchain to exist. And what the original blockchain, as proposed by Satoshi, did was it created an original innovation based on putting about 5 or 6 existing technologies together in a brilliant manner. And it has sustained, all sorts of attacks and all sorts of, things that would have, perhaps killed other experiments. And it has grown from something that for its first year and a half didn't even have a marketplace. It was just traded among miners, and the main use was gambling. They say, well, these things will be worth something someday. Maybe I have 1,000 Bitcoin, you have 1,000 Bitcoin, let's play dice. And the very first instance of somebody buying something wasn't until it was about a year and a half out in May of 2010, about 11 years ago, when one miner paid another miner 10,000 Bitcoin to buy him a pizza.
Why are there so many different types of cryptocurrency? Because Bitcoin is a type, Ethereum is a type, Dogecoin is a type. You actually, as part of your business, do what's called an ICO, an initial, not public offering, but coin offering, where you actually help organizations that are launching new coins make a market for those coins. Yeah.
Well, ICO is not even a term that's used anymore. That was kind of a term from 2017 and 18. And I wasn't the one who was staging them. We were simply doing marketing or advisory work for other companies who were innovating that model. So we worked with the very first company to do an initial coin offering. It's again, like cryptocurrency, sort of an unfortunate word, because if they simply called it token starter like Kickstarter, it would actually be a little bit more relevant, because it's not an offering of a security. Under the US SEC, under Clayton, Jay Clayton, the past chairman of the SEC under Trump, he basically looked and said, I think most of these things are securities. Prove to me that they're not, as opposed to actually having a regulation. He went back and said, well, we have the 1933 Act, and we have the Howey test, which was a Supreme Court ruling on what was and wasn't a security based on the differences between orange futures and wine futures. And it had nothing to do with technology. It had nothing to do with the innovations of the internet. It actually predated, mainstream television, and computers. So, under the current regime, under Biden and under Gensler, who's just recently been approved, we're expecting that there will actually be hearings and there will actually be definitions, instead of saying, hey, go back to the 1930s and fight it out in court. So that will be, there is currently a proposal by the longest standing commissioner on the SEC, Hester Peirce, who was a Republican appointee under Obama. So she's a little bit apolitical, in control as the chairman. So now you have a 3-2 majority for the Democrats. But, for the most part, I wouldn't say that it's really kind of a mainstream political issue. I think it's really a definition of trying to figure out what regulation to put this under, because right now in the United States, you've got the IRS since 2014 has said that Bitcoin and most cryptocurrencies are property. FinCEN has said it's money. And the CTFC has implied that it's commodities like gold. And so you have to have some agreement about what this is, or else, everybody has to kind of just guess on their own. And for the most part, what they've done is American entrepreneurs have left the United States and simply done everything outside of the United States, because they're just afraid that they're going to get it wrong, because there's no clarity about what getting it right is. And so most jurisdictions outside of the United States and a few other jurisdictions, have said, no, we know what it is. I mean, Singapore has said what it is, and some other places have said, yes, if you do a token generation event in our jurisdiction, here are the rules. Within the United States, Wyoming has said, we will exempt you as not being a security if you meet the following criteria, because the SEC has said Bitcoin is not a security. They said Ethereum is not a security, but they had this kind of vague definition that if you're using a token to go and build something that doesn't exist, then it's a security, which is kind of an odd thing, because that's what Kickstarter does, right? And Kickstarters are typically not considered securities, because you don't have any equity interest in the company. And so we're in this very gray area right now that most entrepreneurs simply don't deal with the US, and they simply go offshore, and they start companies in Singapore. And it's a shame, because this is all taxable revenue that is saying we want to be a US company. And so there's been a flocking of companies to Wyoming, because Wyoming, which 2 years ago was 3 years ago, I forget when they had the first legislation, was very kind of, I wouldn't say anti-crypto. They just simply, their existing regulations said you couldn't even donate Bitcoin, and then that was considered money laundering of some form. And Caitlin Long, who is an incredibly bright woman, a friend of mine, who graduated from the University of Wyoming, went to New York, spent 25 years on Wall Street at Morgan Stanley primarily, and then got into cryptocurrency early. She wanted to go and donate Bitcoin to her university, and they said, well, you can donate cash, but from our reading, it's against the law for you to donate Bitcoin. She said, that's ridiculous. She moved back to Wyoming. She got that law changed and clarified in Wyoming. And while she was there, she decided that she could turn Wyoming into a crypto capital for the United States. And she, working with the Wyoming governor, the Wyoming legislature, have now passed over 70 laws. And there's been a boom of companies moving to Wyoming to do token sales there, because Wyoming will go and say, under our securities administration, we will say, if you are this, this, and this, we will say you're not a security, and you can go and raise, you can sell your token, and will not be considered a security. It'll just be considered like a crowd sale, like a Kickstarter. And which is taxable, right? So it's 21%
Talk to
tax.
me,
And so,
walk me through that, because if I have cash, right, and I wire it to my Coinbase account,
right.
and then I buy cryptocurrency and the cryptocurrency goes up, and then I want to sell I want to take some of my earnings off the table, I pay capital gains tax on that.
Yes.
How does that work? I guess when I transfer it out of Coinbase, or
Well, no,
where's
this
the
is
taxable event?
so the taxable event is anytime you trade it. Before 2018, it was only when you turn it into fiat currency. But January of 2018, they implemented something called the GILTI tax, GILTI. I like to say it's you're guilty until proven innocent. And so if you bought Bitcoin for, say, $10,000, and then you end up saying, I think Ethereum is better, and you end up buying Ethereum at $1,000, a year ago or whenever it was last $1,000, you have to immediately pay tax on your profit from Bitcoin from 1,000 to Ethereum, even though you don't cash it in. You have to sell enough to be able to pay the tax on it. That
Michael,
happened in 2018.
So when you had your difficulty with AT&T, and when you were robbed coins in native wallets, it didn't affect your Bitcoin or your Ethereum. Just really quickly, paint a picture for us of the different types of currencies and how they're generally used.
Sure. So again, a blockchain is open source software. Bitcoin is open source software. And, Satoshi came out and said, this is a peer-to-peer money system, but, it'll develop as the world wants to develop it. And Vitalik Buterin, who I met before he did Ethereum, and through Anthony Diorio, who's a good friend of mine in Toronto. And, I met him in sort of like the days just after he started the Toronto Bitcoin meetup, and he became a client and again, a good friend. And he introduced me to Vitalik. And actually, I think I met Vitalik through someone else around the same time. But anyway, it was a very small circle of people in Toronto at the time, late 20, mid 2013. And Vitalik came up with a concept of being able to go and make Bitcoin, take some of the weaknesses of Bitcoin in terms of its programmability on chain, and to create a new cryptocurrency that would actually allow you to create smart contracts on chain. Whereas with Bitcoin, you can't do that. With Bitcoin, you have to create things off chain that would then have smart contract ability, or at least some form of that. And he really saw, I think brilliantly, at age 19 in his white paper, the use case for having cryptocurrency actually, automatically enable commerce, right? So in other words, if you've got, let's take the shipping industry. In the shipping industry, hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars globally, you have this very archaic system where you have to have a bill of lading, you have to have like money wired here, and then you have to make sure everything is there. You can put that all onto a blockchain. But with Bitcoin, it's still on the blockchain just to enable the payment, and it's not automatic. You would still be checking things and then sending other things. Now there are innovators trying to build things on top of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's kind of slowness, and it's well designed for what it's become, which is a store of value and of large movement of dollars. It's lousy at paying for a cup of coffee, which was his original thought that someone could do, because the fees have gone up as the security has gone up, and it's all based on algorithms. Ethereum was originally sort of seen as and still really pretty much as a world computer, as the ability to be able to go and program smart contracts that will self-execute. So that if I have a contract with you and it's in code, I don't need to have a court to enforce it. It basically says, if this is done, this is done, and this is done, then the payment automatically goes through. So when the ship arrives, it'll go in, you'll scan things, see if that's what matches the scans, program into the blockchain, and it'll automatically deliver the funds. And obviously, garbage in, garbage out. If everything arrives as broken, but the code is still there, maybe it goes through, and then you have to have some dispute mechanism for, like, is it broken or whatever. But we're still in the early days of this. But Ethereum, did do what was called an ICO back then, and that was $18 million that they sold in Ethereum tokens at 30 cents a piece. They recently reached the high of over $4,300 a piece. So obviously that was a very good purchase of that. And, the SEC said, well, it might have been a security at the time, but we're not going to prosecute them. They, of course, were largely Canadians who did the offering, the sale out of Switzerland. But they did not block U.S. investors. It's because there's no regulations. It's hard to go and say what prosecutions will be because there's no regulations, and so everybody is aching for regulations.
Let me read you a little snippet from Scott Galloway's podcast this morning. He says, in sum, Facebook and YouTube have said we're all about creators. They could give a fuck about creators. There's millions of creators on these platforms that have realized you can't make any money. These guys, Facebook and YouTube, are going to starch all the margin from them. And occasionally, there'll be some very well publicized examples of some crazy gamers or some crazy YouTubers that makes $2-3 million bucks. But meanwhile, Google is literally making $2 to $3 billion every week. So here's my question. You've been following this. I mean, you and I talked about this when you first got started in it. So you've been following this and you've been your nose to the grindstone in this for over a decade now. I know of I can name 3 cryptocurrencies: Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dogecoin. That's all I know. So
you probably didn't know much about Dogecoin until Elon started tweeting about it.
So the question is this: is it the same thing as the social networks, where everyone's sort of running in and 2 or 3 people get lucky and wind up becoming mega influencers and making all this money, but everyone else is just starching all the margin for somebody else to make the money? Or how many cryptocurrencies are out there and how many actually are valuable?
Sure. So there's about 10,000 cryptocurrencies out there, and the vast majority have little to no value. But you could say the same thing about startups, right? How many startups are out there how many screenplays are out there? I mean, so it's the long tail effect in anything. So you have a handful of cryptocurrencies that have an active community, and they go up and down over time. If you look at the top 10 cryptos in 2013, I think Bitcoin and Litecoin are the only ones that are still in the top 10 today. In fact, I don't think Litecoin's even in the top 10 anymore. I think it's out of the top 10 now. And there were other things called DevCoin and Namecoin that are were in the top 10 then, and that are infinitesimally small now because their communities kind of went away. I mean, Namecoin, for example, its initial purpose was to act as a token that you'd be able to go and build domain names on and have them be decentralized. It was a great idea. They just didn't, execute well, and they had sort of like all these kind of people who came in and grabbed all these names and never did anything with them. And it still exists, but it's like a fraction of what it was in terms of the value to a Bitcoin. On the other hand, there have been other ones that have now built on Ethereum, which is much more of an actionable network. And there's 3 of them, one of which I'm an advisor to, called Butterfly Protocol. BFLY is the token. And they ended up doing a token sale. They don't call them ICOs anymore. Again, did it outside of the United States. And they've been kind of up and down since then, because cryptocurrencies this year have been kind of wildly volatile. But even at today's price, I think they're about 3 or 4 times the price of what they went out, and they're still developing, right? And so they're letting people go in and be able to develop domains. So you could go and buy the rights to .eric, and it would then on a Chrome browser, you'd be able to go in and say, hey, go to download this. Just like with a Brave browser, you have to download an extension. You just download this extension. You can go and get all these .eric addresses if .eric has not been purchased yet. And so there's a few other entities out there that are doing similar things. One has the .nft domain. but again, you need their extension. And they're all
let me ask you something about NFTs
Ethereum
for a second.
Sure.
So if I wanted, I have a book out, I have a new book. If I wanted to sell my book as an NFT, how would I do that?
So we're still early in the NFT process. I mean, you could literally just mint it and put it out there. And you just
would then minting?
have to.
What is
minting? Minting is when you actually go and you issue the NFTs because they're non-fungible tokens. Bitcoin is a fungible token. One Bitcoin is just like another Bitcoin. They're completely exchangeable for one another. NFT stands for non-fungible token. So on certain blockchains, you have the ability to go and mint a token that has completely different capabilities, or not capabilities, but properties than other ones. That the original concept of an NFT was actually called a colored coin, where you took Bitcoin and you'd say, hey, I have one Bitcoin, which maybe back then was only worth $10 or something. And each Bitcoin has 100 million pieces called Satoshis. And you would go and say, I'm going to take this Bitcoin. It's always going to be worth at least one Bitcoin. But I'm now going to go and put memos in the field saying, access Eric's book or whatever. And if I had that particular coin with that memo field in it, I could go in and send it to a program that would then unlock the ability to get your book. However, because again, not
PDF, a Mobi file, like what would they unlock?
Whatever you want. So if you're getting now to the more up-to-date version, which runs largely on Ethereum, although anything running the EVM and other smart contract oriented blockchains is able to do this, as well as some that are non-smart contract, it's able to go in and create a secure. So it's still very early in terms of the technology. But right now, if you look at the $70 million NFT that Beeple created, there's a unique token that is issued on Ethereum using the ERC 721 standard, which is different than the ERC 20 standard for fungible tokens. And you would have the private key that would unlock that, and nobody else in the world could unlock it.
So then with something like a book, if I were to sell it as an NFT, would I be selling the rights of the book, or how would
no,
like
only one person whatever
you
could sell whatever you wanted? I mean, the typical thing is you would sell perhaps say 1,000 books and you would mint 1,000 NFTs. And so I'm actually an advisor and investor in a company called Rare, RAIR. They're at rare.tech, that is taking a watermarking technology on a blockchain that will simplify the security, as well as, because right now, if you want to have a book out, you have two choices. You either, well, I say three choices. You go to a publisher and they do everything for you and they take, lion's share of the profits. And then even on the ebook sales, they have to give up, say, 30% to Amazon before you then get your royalty, which is 10% or whatever it's going to be. Or you can go directly to Amazon and just sort of be under the great unwashed of the non-traditional publishers, and they'll take 70%. And then you have to kind of fight out for visibility there. And if they don't like it, they can say, we're not going to put your book up. Or you can go and just have your website, put your PDF up, and just hope those people don't copy it, or put some kind of watermarking on there, which usually there's hacks for. So what Rare does is it enables you to still put something on your website, as well as the different portals that are going to be powering. And you can say, I'm going to be issuing 1,000 NFTs for my book. I'm going to be charging $20 for it. The way Rare works is you get to the standard, but again, it's customizable, is that you'll get 90% of that. So you'll get, $18 out of the 20. Rare as the enabler will get 9%. And the node holders will get 1% because they're having to actually run the tokens that in a decentralized fashion generate the key that will let each individual person unlock the book. So you'll have 1,000 separate tokens, and those tokens each represent one copy of the book. Now you can serialize them and number them if you want. Like think of it the way a serigraph would be in art. You can have that maybe a random 10 of them have some goodies in it, like a kind of a Pokemon prize, and that's that's a rare video, or it's an airdrop of like a free $795 seminar that you run or something like that. So, or you could have those goodies put into a rarer version of it. So maybe you only have 10 of the, kind of super duper VIP version. Like you used to be able to go have tiers on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I think that's going to develop now to having tiers of NFTs. So we're really at the beginning of NFTs, and that's one reason why Ethereum price has gone from $80 to over 4,000 in a little over a year, was because the two hottest areas in tech right now, in blockchain tech, are NFTs, which are largely Ethereum in terms of volume of sales, and DeFi. And both of those, though, have competitive blockchains and competitive solutions to, Ethereum originally was sort of the faster, better, cheaper model. And now all of a sudden they've gotten so big that their, fees have gone astronomical in some cases. I mean, sometimes it's going to cost you over $100 for a single NFT.
What is crypto staking?
Wow, you're really bouncing around here. So crypto staking is where you're going and taking a cryptocurrency, and they have a solution within the blockchain or within the company that created the blockchain, or the foundation that created the blockchain, that you get rewarded for locking up a certain number of tokens. I'd say one of the earliest ones to do that would be a company we worked with in the early days called Dash. Dash basically had this thing called master nodes, and if you had 1,000 master nodes, if you had 1,000 coins, you would be able to go and put them into a master node that would then help secure the network, and it would also get, I think, like 7% a year of the mining rewards that would be distributed to the node holders. And so it's effectively a form of interest, although the IRS has implied but not made any formal statements that it's considered ordinary income as opposed to capital gains.
Is there an easy way for someone who's listening to this? They've got some risk capital, they got 10 grand, 50 grand, and they want to get it into crypto, but they don't want to spend a freaking week learning which app to use and what a cold wallet is and which one to buy and how to do it. Is there an easy way to go to just get some money into crypto and put it on the shelf?
That's like saying, is there an easy way to be an entrepreneur or an easy way to become a millionaire? It all depends what kind of time you're willing to invest in terms of what your returns are going to be like in general in life. Again, disclosure, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a CFA or anything. I'm just somebody with a lot of experience in the field. And so these are only my opinions, and do your own research. But if you got 10,000 to invest, and you have no cryptocurrency at all, I would think the safest thing is just simply put half of it in Bitcoin and half of it in Ethereum. Those are the large caps. Those are the ones that aren't going to go to zero. And right now there's been a bit of a pullback in both of them because of the tweet that Elon did saying he was going to stop taking Bitcoin for buying Teslas, and a complete overreaction, I thought. So I'm still firmly in the belief that Bitcoin will be over 100,000 by the end of the year, because that's about where we are in the 4-year cycles. I then think that for the most part, when it hits those highs, you should take a little bit off the table and buy some back when it hits the lows, which are usually, it's kind of an every other year phenomenon. So you so far have hit your all-time highs of the cycle in 2013, 2017, and 2021, and you hit your lows of the cycle in 2015 and in 2019. And so the odds are, based on a lot of technical analysis, that we'll continue to hit a higher high by the end of this year, 2021, and then we'll go and hit the low for the next cycle in 2023, and then hit another high in 2025.
What do you like for which app do you like, and which cold wallet do you like?
Oh, so it all depends on what you're using it for. I mean, for apps, we have a client called Abra, ABRA, and they're a good app. They let you go in and sort of have a wallet solution and exchange solution all in one. They're Silicon Valley based, and they also have a capacity for earning interest and also taking out loans. So they're kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of the things you might want to do in crypto. And they're, Silicon Valley, company. So they're not like some crazy offshore thing. Not that everything offshore is crazy. And then for wallets, typically you're going to have your long-term holdings. If you've got, more than like, say, $50,000 worth of crypto, you want to keep it typically in a hardware wallet. So I like Ledger. That's a company out of France that's been around for a while. And then Trezor was sort of the original one. Either one of them are very secure.
Repeat the second, because I didn't quite hear the second.
Trezor, Trezor.
Okay.
And then there's also a company that, I was an early advisor to called Engrave that, they did a Indiegogo last year to sort of fund their initial hardware wallets, and they'll be shipping them within the next few months.
Well, Michael, it has been very interesting as usual, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Where can people get a hold of you? What's going on with the conference? When is CoinAgenda striking it back up again?
Sure. So delighted to say we haven't announced this formally. I think it's on the website now, but we're going to put the announcements out in the next couple of days. We will be having 3 physical events. Our last physical event was CoinAgenda Caribbean last year in February, just before everything locked down. And we had to have our CoinAgenda Global last October virtually because, Las Vegas had not opened up. So we have an annual global event in Las Vegas that runs, sort of adjacent to the Money 2020 shows. And so we will be having that this year on, let me make sure I get the date right. It is the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at the end of October, and that is the 25th to 27th, October 25th to 27th, and it should be up on coinagenda.com. We will also be having our 5th annual, so that's our 8th annual CoinAgenda Global. It'll be our 5th annual CoinAgenda Caribbean in San Juan. I started the first cryptocurrency conferences in the Caribbean when I moved down to San Juan, and it's our 5th year. And that's going to be very heavy on the NFT area because we're going to have it a week after Art Basel this year. And it's going to be December 6th through 8th in San Juan. So go to Art Basel and, check out the NFT art and other art there, and then hop down to San Juan for, beautiful weather. And we're going to have some great speakers there. And then we are going to be holding our first CoinAgenda Europe since 2018. We usually just do Europe and Asia during bull markets. And we'll be having that in Monaco. And that is at the end of September. I believe the tentative dates are the 28th to 30th, but we have not confirmed them yet. They'll be on the site shortly, but they will be in Monaco right after the yacht show.
Do you have a venue for Vegas?
Yes, we do. New York, New York. This will be the
and what about
8th year, and every year we had a different venue.
What about Puerto Rico?
We are going to be in San Juan. We are talking to 2 different places. We are most likely to be in the El San Juan Hotel, but we haven't confirmed it yet. But it'll probably be in Isla Verde.
Great.
Which is right near the airport in the city.
Well, Michael, great catching up
on the beach.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Okay, thank you, Eric.